we are back Thursday, April 16th. Welcome to my kitchen. Today, we're moving on to another one of our 5 mother sauces of cuisine. Next one up on the slate, now that we have done with tomato sauce, is Béchamel. Okay, and for those of you who do not remember, Béchamel is our white milk-based creamy sauce that can be used for a number of different things in cuisine. Today, we're just going to be preparing our Béchamel sauce very, very much in its standard way that it's intended to be made. And like all of the mother sauces, provides us tremendous flexibility to do multiple things with it. We're actually going to be later today turning our Béchamel sauce into one of my favorite things to eat again. Obviously, cooking at home here, I'm trying to make things that I enjoy eating and things that I hope you enjoy eating as well, and that you can recreate on your own after watching these videos. But we're going to be making mac and cheese. You know, macaroni and cheese to me is about as all-American of a dish as it comes. And I have encountered very, very few people in my lifetime who don't like it. But we'll get on to that later. All right, so first, a couple of points to talk about with Béchamel, all right? It is a milk-based sauce. Milk can be incredibly temperamental when it gets brought up to a boil. It burns and scorches tremendously easy. So this sauce commands our attention and respect, and we need to be very careful and not take our eye off it. Okay, not once. The first thing that we're going to get going here is we're going to create the roux. And the roux is the thickening agent for this sauce. Okay, roux is a combination of equal parts fat and flour. The flour that we're going to be using is bread flour. We still have plenty of King Arthur bread flour here in the cupboards. We're going to be using butter, and it's, you know, roux in its most kind of classic form. You could substitute different fats if you would like. I mean, you can make roux with bacon fat. You can make roux with duck fat. You can make roux with beef fat. You can make roux with chicken fat. In fact, a lot of fundamental classically trained chefs would use the appropriate animal fat that they would save from either roasting or skimming off of a sauce or a stock to create that roux to flavor that sauce and so on. But since Béchamel is our pure white, very pure, simple of our mother sauces, we're just going to go with butter and flour. For those of you who may be gluten-free or have celiac disease or a gluten intolerance, you can use the cup-for-cup flours or the gluten-free alternatives, or even use cornstarch. You may need to adjust the amounts that you use because their thickening properties are a little different than that of flour. Okay, so we're going to head down to the stove over here, and we're going to get our butter melting, all right, to create our roux, all right? Right over here, okay, we have 6 tablespoons of butter, okay? 6 ounces of butter, excuse me. Okay, we're going to get that melting down. All right. We need to be very cautious that we do not let this butter brown or burn. So we're going to turn our heat down. Okay, it was up high. We're going to turn it down low. All right, be very gentle with it. While the roux is going, we're going to start the foundational base for the Béchamel sauce as well. So here we have a fairly large stock pot. All right, I believe this holds about 2.5 gallons. Again, this is another one of my all-clad pans. Thanks, Mom. Love you. My mother bought me this wonderful set of all-clad pans for Christmas a few years ago, and boy, is it really nice to have these really fantastic professional grade heavy duty pots and pans to work with at home. I'm certainly very grateful. Okay, so while our butters are melting here, we're going to go take a look at our other mise en place and ingredients for our Béchamel sauce. Okay, So down here we have some Spanish onions, or just our kind of standard white onions that we small diced. Now we're only making about a gallon or 3/4 of our bechamel sauce, so it's actually not going to have a very long simmer time. So we can have our onions cut a little smaller. When I was working in resort kitchens, we wouldn't make a gallon. We would make 10 gallons of bechamel sauce at a time. 10 gallons of bechamel sauce takes a lot longer to cook and simmer, so we would cut our onions bigger, okay? Small batches, small simmer time, small size cut, okay? Big batches, long simmer time, bigger cut on your vegetables. Bay leaves, okay? We're actually only going to need a couple of those, but here's my bay leaves, all right? This is our flour for our roux, okay? King Arthur bread flour, 11.7% protein content. Here we have cloves, whole cloves, and we have whole nutmeg berries. Now, nutmeg may be one of the coolest spices, all right? Nutmeg is the only plant that produces 2 distinctly different spices from one plant. The berry, the nutmeg berry here, and this is in its whole dry form, it's very hard. Okay, this is your nutmeg. We're actually going to be using our microplane zester here, and it, okay. Oh, so good. Okay.
Oh my.
Grinds it right off. But on the outside of nutmeg, okay, on the actual tree and the plant, there is this kind of like membrane webbing on it that is completely edible. And when it gets dried out and ground up, that is what's called mace. They are kind of similar, but not really. They have very different properties. They're kind of like cousins, but they come from the same plant, but they're considered 2 different spices. Now, our butter is almost melted, all right? I can kind of hear it kind of like spackling and cackling away in there. That's the milk or the water that's actually cooking or starting to evaporate out of the butter. So that tells me I'm ready to add my flour, okay? Flour. Goes in, okay? I have a wooden spoon here. And just going to mix this in. Now, roux, folks, all right, there's many different levels of roux, all right? You can make a blonde roux, which is actually what we're going to be doing today, all right, where we really only need to cook it and help cook some of that starch out of the flour just for a minute or 2. As you can see, it's coming together almost like a paste. You can take your roux and you can continue to cook it, and it'll turn into what's called brown roux, all right? As the flour cooks in the fat, it'll start toasting. Think of the exterior of a loaf of bread, all right? The flour is white. You mix the dough is white, or very pale white. You bake it, and then by magic of baking and cooking, it turns brown, okay? That reaction is actually called the Maillard reaction, or the Maillard effect. The Maillard reaction is when the amino acids in the flour and the protein actually break down, all right, and they kind of dissolve, and they feed off of the sugars, or either the additional sugars or the natural sugars, and they turn brown. It's scientifically much different than caramelization, where you actually take sugar, you cook it, it turns brown, okay? I stopped to see my friend Magda at Polish Princess yesterday and bought a beautiful French baguette. And you can see the color of this baguette is a nice dark brown, okay? And like we were just saying, it was the Maillard reaction that turned this brown. It's had nothing to do with any caramelized sugars. So our roux is ready to go, okay? It's cooked to the level that I would like, okay? And I'll show you. See, it's almost like a paste. All right, we're just gonna set this aside on the back of the stove. Okay. I'm gonna move my pot for my bechamel over here now. All right, and our butter has melted here in the pan. Okay. And just like our roux, we do not want this butter to brown. We want the sauce to stay nice and white. We're going to add our diced onions in. And we are just going to let those sweat. And if we remember, sweating, translucent and slightly soft, no brown. For our milk, we're going to be using whole milk, okay? If you're looking for something lower calorie or less fat, you could certainly use a skim milk or a 1%, but, you know, hey, you only live once, all right? We're all in lockdown. We're all in quarantine. If you're going to be living under these constraints, you better be eating good. You better be eating good. And plus, let's not kid ourselves. We're going to be throwing in about 4,000 calories worth of cheese and bacon later on into this mac and cheese. Oh, it's going to be good. All right. So if you're going to be cutting your calories anywhere, just take the bacon out, take out all that cheese, and maybe add some vegetables to your mac and cheese you're going to be making. So whole milk, always the best. Now, our onions are to the point of sweating just where we want them. Any longer, and we run the risk of them starting to turn brown or the butter potentially browning in itself, thus yielding us not that beautiful white bechamel that we're looking for. So at this point now, we're going to pop in bay leaves, okay? Now, bay leaves, always count them in when you're putting them in, okay? You count them in, you count them out. All right, bay leaves are edible, but when they're dried out like this, and they have very sharp corners, and they could get stuck in your mouth, and it could, you could choke on them. It could cut the inside of your throat. So you always just want to be very cautious with them. So we're going to use 2 bay leaves, split them in half. So that's going to be 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Our cloves. We're going to use 4. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this sauce is going to be strained eventually, so I guess maybe we don't need to count them in, but it is best practice. If we had a broth soup, let's say, or you know, any type of a braise or a stew, we would also put in bay leaves in there, and we can't puree that up. We can't strain that out, so it's just best practice to count them in and count them out.
You are fake news.
Going to add just a little bit of salt we put in there. Now, I don't like pepper in my bechamel sauce. There is a couple of different schools of thought on this, and I guess it just boils down to preference. We could use this absolutely satanic and ghastly thing called white pepper.
Not today, Satan. Not today.
I just have this personal utter disdain for white pepper. But there is a type of pepper that its peppercorn is a little on the whiter or lighter side as opposed to a black peppercorn. But in my opinion, I think the taste is just awful. I've worked for European chefs that love white pepper. They would put white pepper on vegetables because they said that black pepper makes them look dirty. I'm like, well, anyone with half a brain would feel that, you know, hey, that is definitely pepper and not specks of dirt. But hey, it was their kitchen, their rules, you know. This is my kitchen, my rules. I suppose we could put whole peppercorns in here and strain them out, but I don't have whole peppercorns. I just have, I mean, I'm not going to bust this thing open and karate chop it in half. All right, so we're just not going to put pepper in. All right. You can take your sauce later on and finish it with pepper, or I'm sure we're going to put pepper in it when we create our mac and cheese, or there are other things that we can do with this bechamel sauce, which I do intend on doing. Okay? Now, folks, like I was saying, it's a workhorse. There's a number of things you can do with it. Potatoes. You take this bad boy. You slice it up nice and thin. Okay? You lay it down in this baking dish. You sprinkle some cheese action on there. Maybe you get some caramelized onions in there. All right? You dump that bechamel sauce over the top. Hit it with a little cheese action on top. Boom! Potatoes au gratin. So good. All right? Look at this. Broccoli. I love broccoli. Broccoli is so underrated. All right? It's good. Well, good just like this. Okay? I love broccoli. It's good. It's good for you. Finish that later. Take your broccoli and blanch it in boiling salted water, folks. Shock it in ice water. Put it in a baking dish. Pour some of your bechamel sauce on there, okay? A little cheddar cheese. All right? Some breadcrumbs on top. Or what I even like to do is I take Ritz crackers and crush them up. I love Ritz crackers. Drizzle a little butter and paprika over the top. Ooh. Now you're talking. Our milk is ready to go in. We're going with the whole gallon. The pour game is strong here. Strong in the pour game. Look at that. Boom. I always take your gallon containers and kind of break them down before you throw them in the trash. Otherwise, your trash cans get taken up with air. That's just dumb. Town of Whitefield makes us pay all this money for these town bags. All right? You better believe I fill up that bag with every possible square millimeter of trash. Now, while we bring this up to the simmer, all right, we're going to hit it with some of our nutmeg, all right? Probably, I'd say a sixth of this, all right? Nutmeg is a powerful spice. A little goes a long way. All right, so we're going to hit it up with some of our nutmeg. Good to go. Pop these back away. We're all done with these guys. All right. Always seal up your spices really good when they're not in use. All right. Contact with air over a long period of time will cause them to go stale. They'll lose their flavor and their potential potency. So take care of your stuff. You paid for it. All right, guys, we're going to break here for a little bit, all right? This is going to take probably 10, 15 minutes to come up to a simmer before we can add our roux to it, all right? So all this talk about food and deliciousness, chef's getting hungry. I haven't had breakfast yet, only coffee. So we're going to be taking a little breakfast break here. When we come back, we're going to be finishing up our bechamel sauce, all right? And we'll look forward to seeing you then. Guys, we're back and we're ready to start incorporating our roux into our bechamel sauce to get this finished up. And what we're going to do is use a technique that I call tempering. And tempering by slowly adding or slowly adjusting or slowly incorporating one thing into something else. Okay, so we have a mixing bowl here, and we're actually going to pop our roux in the mixing bowl. I finally got myself a ladle for my home use here. I had to pop up to school the other day, guys, to grab a few other things in order to do what I'm doing here at home. And I'm like, you know, I'm finally going to get a ladle. So here we go. Now we're going to add some of this mixture here, all right, our bechamel base here into the roux. Okay, and we're going to mix this all up, okay? Now, if we're not careful in how we add our roux, it's not going to thicken up properly, and it's going to get really lumpy and chunky, and we want to do our best to avoid all the lumpy chunkies, okay? And again, even though we're going to be straining this, if we don't release, okay, all of those thickening properties out of the flour that we need, our bechamel sauce is not going to be the consistency and the thickness that we aspire for it to be when it is complete. You can see it's kind of like still super pasty, but now it's going to be able to incorporate in a lot easier, okay? Now you're going to see I am just going to take this, and just stir it right here, and then continue to add it slowly. Okay, I want to make sure that it's well incorporated. And right now I can't really see it in there, but I can feel it. I can feel it on my whisk, okay? In a minute, we're going to give this a taste and check for our salt levels. Now, like our tomato sauce, we don't want to go hog wild on the seasoning. We want to give ourselves flexibility to adjust our seasoning and salt levels around other things we may bring to the party here. And like I said, I had mentioned that we're going to be turning a lot of this into a big batch of macaroni and cheese, and I intend on putting some bacon in there. And bacon is salty, so we're going to really want to make sure we don't overdo it with the salt. All right, so now we are at the point more than ever where we need to keep a close eye on this, okay? We really run the risk of this scorching and burning right now at this point more than ever. So we need to make sure that we're constantly stirring this, okay? So I am not going anywhere until this is finished and it's off the heat and we start straining it, okay? Now, it doesn't mean I need to stand there and constantly stir it, but this last thing I want to see is this to come to a rolling boil. That would be very bad. Just a light simmer. I don't want to burn my face off. That certainly needs a touch more salt. And by touch, I mean a solid tablespoon or a chef pomful. Now, the other thing we need to be aware of is that we need to allow the starch in the flour to actually cook out. Starches, as they cook down, break down into a form of sugar, okay? So the sauce is going to have almost a natural sweetness to it without the addition of any added sugar or molasses or honey, maple syrup, or anything like that. Now, the best way to tell if the starch is all properly cooked out is when you taste the sauce, all right? If the starches aren't cooked out, it's going to have almost a astringent or chalkiness to it, like you can feel it on your taste buds. When it's all cooked out, it doesn't give you that sensation or feeling, and it's just very smooth and creamy. Time to taste. I think our seasoning and our flavor is right where we need it to be, but it still has a touch of that chalkiness to it and that naturally occurring starch that hasn't broken down into sugars. But we also need to make sure that this gets hot enough to cook out that starch, okay? If the mass of sauce here in this pot doesn't at least get to close to 200 degrees, that starch is not ever going to break down. So it's always going to have that kind of chalky and tackiness that we don't want, all right? So I'm actually going to give it just a little more heat, but this is going to be the point where I'm going to give it added heat, but constant motion, so it doesn't stick and scorch to the bottom of this pot. Even though our pot is a nice, thick, heavy-bottomed stainless steel pot, which is a nice, good, even conductor of heat, all right, we still run the risk just with the qualities of the milk in itself of it burning. All right, I think our bechamel sauce is now just the way we need it to be. So I'm actually going to shut my heat off all the way. Okay. Give that a really good stir. Make sure nothing's stuck or scorched to the bottom. Okay. And any of our bay leaves that we can see right here on top, I'm actually just going to... There's one. Two. And we'll catch the other ones in the strainer. All right, so now we have our device that we're going to be straining into. We have just this handy dandy kitchen strainer. The nice fine one's good. Now we could certainly use the China cap like we have at school, but I didn't bring that home. Or even the chinois, which is a really fine one. And what we're going to end up with is it's going to strain out all of the cloves. It'll strain out the onions. It's going to strain out the bay leaves, and it's just going to leave that flavor that we're looking for in the sauce. Okay. One last taste check. It's thickened up significantly. Ooh, that's so good. That's so good. Guys, bechamel sauce. You know, we're going to be using this as a foundation for mac and cheese, but like I had said, what you could do with the potatoes au gratin, or that you could do with the broccoli. This sauce just kind of spooned all by itself over a piece of pan-roasted chicken breast. It's wonderful. Okay, you can turn this into some great seafood casseroles as well, shrimp and scallops. Add a little bit of lemon juice in there and some paprika. Okay, and then kind of broil it up in a dish. Wonderful. There's so much that you can do with this. Okay, another thing you can do is they call it in the Navy SOS. Okay, on a shingle. All right. Yes, I said on a shingle. They take an item that's called chip beef. Okay, chip beef is this really kind of thin sliced. I think they take it off of the leg or the eye round. Beef that's really like heavily salt cured and dried, and thus requiring very minimal refrigeration. And it's shaved very, very thin. And then they cook that in boiling salted water. Actually, no, plenty of salt in there, just boiling water. And then toss it in the sauce, and they serve it over either biscuits or toast points. Now, you could also take this, brown up some breakfast sausage, boom, sausage gravy. Hit it hard with the black pepper in that context. Maybe a little bit of sage and thyme. And if you want to sweeten it up, a little bit of maple syrup. Again, 'tis the season. And you could very easily have sausage gravy. So, like we were saying earlier, just the flexibility that you have, especially with this sauce, in addition to all of our 5 other sauces of cuisine, is it's really any cook's dream to constantly have on hand, because it really supplies you with endless opportunities. Now, before we strain this, we're going to go back and just check the consistency test. Can anyone remember the term to coat the back of a spoon? Okay, anybody? There's 4 letters in it, okay? N-A-P-E. Nappe. Okay, N-A-P-E, nappe. Now, I'm going to dip this spoon, okay, right in that sauce. It should coat the back of that spoon nice and evenly. And then when I drag my finger through it, it shouldn't immediately drip. It should have almost a slow-moving drip through it. And then I know that we have our desired consistency. All right, because we're trying to be as clean as we can, I'll put a glove on when I do that, so I'm not just slapping my possible Corona-laced finger straight through the sauce. As you can see, it has coated that spoon nice and evenly. Okay, nice even coat. All right, see the line? Now it's got the slow drip. All right, that is right at the nappe consistency that we're looking for. We certainly wouldn't want it any thicker than that, not for what we plan on doing with it. So it's right where it needs to be. So now I have my straining set up here, a half sheet pan to collect my drips. Okay, I have my my 6-quart plastic container, my strainer, my ladle. Just start ladling this right in here. If I had a larger strainer, I could pour it in. But hey, we're at home. We're going small time, but we're still going big. All right, we're just going big on a small scale. All right, the spirit of going big or go home is still living in Chef's Kitchen here, even in lockdown, even in quarantine. All right, go big or go home. Even if your home is small, which mine is small. Oh, there's another one of our bay leaves. So that would be what, 3? So that means we're only searching for one more. Again, when we're straining, it's not entirely needed to count in, count out like we had said earlier, but still, it's just creating good habits and having best practice, okay? Strainer's pretty full here. Okay, so we're actually going to take a rubber spatula, and first, before we start smashing it through, we're just going to tap the side and let the weight of the sauce push itself through, see? Because even though it's my little, like, you know, kind of ghetto dollar store strainer, it's still mine. I spent money on it, and why would I want to smash it all up and potentially damage it, okay? And there it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. All the bay leaves out and accounted for. Now, shortly after filming this video, guys, actually going to be going live, prepping up the next phase of our finished dish with my Culinary 1 and Culinary 2 students. Okay, and I'm hoping a ton of you are on there, and then we can all kind of talk about what I've done here, and then you can watch it later. And, you know, hey, I know not everyone can be online all the time. That's why I'm making the videos. You can check them out at your leisure, all right? You wake up at 2, 3 in the morning, you can't sleep, boom. Put on Chef's Quarantine Kitchen videos. Guaranteed to learn something, or at the very least get entertained. All right, we're coming to the end here. All right, guys, bechamel sauce, done, ready to go. Came out wonderful, okay? Tastes absolutely delicious. I've always been very fond of bechamel sauce, and I've always been one that's really enjoyed the nutmeggy and the clove overtones to it. You can really taste the ability, and you can taste the skill in this. And, you know, it's one of those little touches in the utilization of spices like that and herbs that separates a professional cook from an amateur cook or a hobbyist or enthusiast cook or chef. We used to always say when I was an apprentice that, you know, it takes minutes to look like a chef, but it takes years to become one. And understanding the depth of flavor that herbs and spices can bring to food is truly what separates an enthusiast amateur from a professional. It's one of many measures. So we're going to take a look down at this. All right, we're going to give it a final taste right here on camera, and then we're going to be signing off, okay? All right, so we got right at, you can see there, 4 quarts, so that's 1 gallon, okay? The little specks that you see in there is the nutmeg, okay? I'm going to give this a taste. You can see how it's pouring. It's got a nice consistency, okay? I could drink a glass of that. I mean, I would make this soup. I guess it's not even remotely a soup. It's a sauce. But when something's good, you just enjoy it. So that concludes bechamel sauce. Again, this is the second one of our 5 mother sauces of cuisine that we have revisited in the home setting. And anybody, guys, if you make anything at home, share that photo with me. Celebrate the success. All right. I don't care if it's something as small as breakfast, or if you do an elaborate meal, or you make a soup, or you have literally recreated something exactly the way that I've made this. All right. I would just love to see that you're still involved with cooking at home as best as you can be. And continue to show the positive energy and the spirit as to why you signed up for the class to begin with, okay? We all love food. We all love to eat, all right? It's one of those things that really brings people together, and you can't ever take that away from somebody, all right? So signing off from today, thank you all for being here again. Hey, stay in touch with your friends, stay in touch with your family, stay in touch with your loved ones. We want you to just keep cooking good. Peace.